Hey guys, the human body is super weird. What's especially weird is when you start finding patterns in how it works, like how your nose is the exact same length as your pinky finger, or that your foot is the same length as your forearm. When I was learning how to draw, I found learning a lot of these anatomy hacks to be helpful, especially when it came to faces. Disclaimer time. All faces are different and variations are what makes us unique, but these hacks are meant to give you a very basic idea of how to proportion a human face and where facial features should go. So let's start with making the head. I know this seems like a tired trope, but if you're just starting out, honestly, the easiest way to draw a head is to start with a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Heads are not perfect circles. This is just to get you started. From there, we're going to add an upside-down triangle to represent the chin and the lower jaw. This can be roughly about half the size of the circle. Again, doesn't need to be perfect. You can add onto it later when you're finalizing the head shape. Also, if you feel confident enough in your abilities that you can just straight up draw the head, then you are welcome to do that. I usually actually do a mix where I start with a circle and then I draw on the chin without doing the triangle first, but everyone is different. So now the question is, where the heck does everything go? Well, we're going to take this head shape we've created and draw a line directly in the middle between the top of the head and the bottom of the chin. On this line is where your eyes will eventually go. We'll get back to that. Halfway between that line, the eye line, and your chin, add another line. This is where the nose will go, eventually. And then halfway between that nose line and the chin again, add another line. This is where the mouth will go. The lines don't need to be perfectly straight. The head is not a flat object in the front, it does curve. A lot of drawing the face seems super stressful, like you need to get it so exact, but you really don't. And I mean, even so, you can always erase or redraw on another piece of paper, or if you're working digital, you can literally have everything on separate layers and move them around however you want. It's okay to not have it be perfect. Okay. So we have our basic construction lines showing where things should go. But wait, Ley, what if someone doesn't follow these rules? What if someone has a longer or a shorter nose? What if someone has bigger lips? First off, these rules aren't exact. As I mentioned, facial features can vary in placement. Eyes can be slightly lower or wider apart, noses and lips can be closer together or farther apart, but if I take this shape I've created and overlay it on a few other people's faces, you'll see it's not that far off. I chose some fairly random people, and when I think of good examples for this, I immediately think of Adam Driver because he has such a unique face. Gemma Ward also has kind of a unique face. She's a model known for her very alien features, and she also has a very round face. I chose Denai Guerrera because I love her, and she's also often bald, which makes her a really great example. And then I found a random lady on Pexels when I was looking for portraits. Okay, so back to our head shape thing. So we have it down, and we have our lines indicating where things will be, so we can start putting in the facial features themselves. I won't go into too much detail on how I draw facial features because that isn't the purpose of the video so much as this is all about the proportions. Let's start with the eyes. Depending on your style, you can draw your eyes whatever size you'd like. They don't need to be centered on the eye line, so to speak, but as long as they're in the general vicinity, you're good. The hack with eyes is that usually, except in some rare occasions, the eyes will be exactly one eye width apart. So I'm just going to draw that in, and probably sped up, I'm not sure. And to save time, I'm just going to mirror the eyeball I just drew. Another tip with eyes is that when a face is properly facing forward, there's about a half eye distance from the outer edge of the eye to where the head ends. So that should give you an idea of how wide the head should be. Another tip for all artists, if you're trying to attempt symmetry at all, is to mirror your art or to turn it upside down. Your brain gets trained into looking at things a certain way, so by looking at your art from literally a different perspective, it's often easier to see errors. Moving on to the nose. Noses are tricky to draw, and I wish I could go into depth as to how I personally draw them, but today I'm just going to do a very basic, simple nose. The thing with noses is that the outside of the nostrils often lines up to where the actual white of the eye begins and that pink inner corner ends, which is called the lacrimal caruncle. Sometimes it's a bit over in one direction or another, but even in people with very wide noses, that's usually the case. Mouths are also kind of tricky, but a good basis for how wide or narrow a mouth should be is that the corners often match up with the pupil or the very outer edge of the iris. I often start by drawing the corners and then I'll build inwards. The jawline lines up with the mouth, give or take a bit. I had kind of filled in the jawline a bit earlier, but now I'll draw the actual head shape. The head is generally a bit bigger at the top as well as rounded. There are no rules for how blunt, rounded, or pointy to draw a chin. Same goes for the jaw. I tried to make both a bit more angular so it's obvious where they are. Ears start either at the top of the arch of the eyebrow or at the top of the eye, and they usually end between the top and bottom of the nostril. These probably vary most of all since people can have larger or shorter ears, but that's sort of a basic idea of how to arrange an ear if you worry about placement. Once again, I'm cheating for time and mirroring things to get a full head, and then fixing things up a bit. And there you go, you have a super basic face. Going back to my quartet of lovely models, I want to show you how the different hacks apply to real-life people. I drew blue lines over the edges of their eyes, and generally everyone's were the exact same. Their eye width matched, the distance between the eyes themselves. Except for Adam Driver, his were just the slightest bit closer, and Denai's were just the slightest bit apart, but they're also the ones that are mostly kind of turned away from the camera. With the noses, the outside of the nostril generally also lines up with where the lacrimal caruncle meets the actual eyeball. Gemma Ward's nose was a bit narrower for her face, it lined up with the inside of the eyes, and Denai's were slightly wider, but that could also be the slight angle that she's at. The mouths didn't always quite line up with the pupil or the outside of the iris. It varies a fair bit from person to person. Gemma's lips lined up with the inside of her iris almost exactly, while the Pexel's model's lips lined up with her pupil exactly. Adam and Denai almost lined up with their pupils, it's pretty close. So yeah, that is it for my anatomy hacks video on faces. I hope you found this useful. If so, please give this video a like and please subscribe to my channel. Do you know of any weird human body things or other anatomy hacks? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!